Completely ignoring international law, China has launched a massive island-building campaign, primarily in the Paracel and Spratly Islands. It has dredged sand to transform submerged reefs and atolls into large artificial islands. Remember, I talked of areas covered by tides at low tide or high tide, and the difference between islands. These islands are not civilian outposts, but they're heavily fortified military bases. China has constructed military-grade runways, advanced sensor arrays, hangars for fighter jets, and emplacements for anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles, effectively creating a network of unsinkable aircraft carriers. The foundation of China's aggressive territorial claims, the Nine-Dash Line, a vague and sweeping claim that covers about 90% of the South China Sea. The claim overlaps with exclusive economic zones of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei, leading to a significant geopolitical tension. China uses its powerful coast guard and a state-controlled maritime militia, a fleet of fishing boats, to harass and intimidate other nations. And against the Philippines, this is where some of the most intense aggression has been detected. China's Coast Guard vessels routinely try to block resupply missions to Filipino military outposts on the second Thomas Shoal. And their tactics include ramming Filipino vessels, firing powerful water cannons, using blinding lasers against the crews, and performing dangerous high-speed maneuvers. Chinese vessels regularly shadow and harass oil and gas exploration vessels and fishing boats from Vietnam and Malaysia from operating within their own internationally recognized exclusive economic zones. Looking at the East China Sea, the conflict is primarily with Japan over a group of uninhabited islands known as the Senkaku Islands in Japan or the Diaoyu Islands in China. China does not occupy the islands but uses its Coast Guard again to wedge a campaign of attrition. Chinese Coast Guard ships make near daily incursions into the territorial waters around the islands, challenging Japanese administration. They frequently trail Japanese fishing boats and shadow Japanese Coast Guard vessels, creating a constant state of tension and aiming to establish a permanent presence through sheer persistence. So what is the Nine-Dash Line? It is a demarcation line or a dividing line drawn on Chinese maps that encircles most of the South China Sea. It centers on a U-shaped line on a map that lacks legal basis under international law, and it was first officially published by China's nationalist Kuomintang government in 1947. With two dashes later removed to form the current Nine-Dash Line. The line's origin is partly attributed to historical misunderstandings and mistranslations by Chinese officials and cartographers, including the erroneous identification of James Shoal as an underwater bank near China. China's claim extends far beyond what is permitted under the UN Convention on the Law of Sea, and a treaty that China itself has signed. But China has significant economic interest as the South China Sea is a major global shipping route and home to abundant fishing grounds, making control over it highly valuable. In addition, it is thought that underneath the South and East China Seas, there are huge reserves of natural resources. From a trade perspective, between $3.5 and $5.5 trillion worth of trade goes through this area on an annual basis. Control of that is significant. In 2016, an International Court of Justice ruled that China's Nine-Dash Line claim was illegal. The Philippines brought a case against China, and an international tribunal ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines, declaring the Nine-Dash Line claim unlawful. But Beijing has consistently rejected the 2016 ruling, claiming it is null and void, and continuing to insist on the legitimacy of its historical claim. Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and the Philippines, along with Indonesia, have rejected China's claim as baseless and a contravention of international law.